Good afternoon, everyone. This is the May 11th, 2021 meeting of the City Finance Committee. May I get a roll call, please?
Mr. DeMartini is coming. One moment, please.
Yes, Committee Chair, Committee Member Gutierrez.
Here.
Committee Member Harmon.
Here.
And Committee Chair Friedman. Committee Chair Friedman, are you? Ms. Nickerson, do we have a technical issue? Okay.
Mr. Friedman, go ahead.
Thank you. I said I was muted by the organizer. Thank you. I am present. Thank you. Now that we got the technical difficulties out of the way, we'll get on to today's agenda. And the first item is public comment for any items not on today's agenda, but under the purview of the Finance Committee. Mr. DeMartini, do we have any public comment for items not on the agenda? I don't see any hands raised, but just wanted to have you double check.
Yes, Chair Friedman, I am monitoring public comment and I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeMartini. I will close public comment and we'll move on to the item for today, which is the Finance Committee's review of the proposed two-year financial plan. First item is the recommendation from outside agency requests, and then we'll do budget fees. So I will turn it over to Mr. DeMartini to kick it off, and then we will hear from those who are making requests. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Chair Friedman. Good afternoon, members of the Finance Committee. My name is Keith DeMartini, your Finance Director, and I'll just kick off this agenda item today before turning it over to those outside organizations that have submitted proposals and requests for funding in fiscal year 22. Next slide, please. So just a quick agenda for me today. We'll just do a quick summary of the requests that staff have already received for this budget cycle. And then I will ask each agency individually to go ahead and make a very short presentation to the committee members today. They have all submitted written requests for funding, which was included in the packet that was emailed to you on Friday afternoon by Ms. Nickerson. So you have them before you, and they'll provide a really high-level brief summary. And then you'll have an opportunity to ask questions and discuss them after the agency folks have delivered their presentations to you. And then if you want to provide direction at that time, that would be great. Next slide, please. So first, I wanted to provide you just a very high-level summary of the 5 requests that staff received for funding in the upcoming budget cycle. They're listed here on this slide, and this is the order in which they will be presenting to you this afternoon. Staff has given them direction to only spend about 5 minutes presenting their proposal to you. For SB Act, they had 2 requests, so we've advised them around 7 minutes. And Committee Chair, I'm happy to sort of time them and to sort of stay within that parameter if you so choose. Again, this will be the order in which they will present. The total of the 5 requests is $625,000 for fiscal year 22. And you'll see the proposed description of the scope of services that they're requesting funding for listed here. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Nickerson to coordinate the agency presentations, starting with Visit Santa Barbara.
Mr. Chair, members of the Finance Committee, my name is Kathy Janega-Dykes. I'm President and CEO of Visit Santa Barbara. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to provide more context surrounding the Visit Santa Barbara requests for the $200,000 out-of-state recovery campaign. And as always, we appreciate your partnership and certainly your faith in our organization. And time again, our organization has demonstrated success in managing your investments really well. So today I'm coming before you to ask you to trust us once again so we can get this economic engine, which is tourism, back to powering at its peak potential. So in the next 5 minutes, I'd like to leave you with just 3 things. First, we have an opportunity to help small businesses throughout our community, and particularly small inns and hotels. 2, it's all about bringing back jobs as well right now. Tourism has been one of the most hardest hit industries during the pandemic. And then the third is really generating the revenues for the city that can be used to either replenish the reserves or fund other well-deserving organizations. And we've been able to bring back the weekend business to decent levels, but there is so much work that needs to be done to fill hotels midweek. And funding this request enables us to quickly expand our outreach to valuable out-of-state markets, while we'll continue to use our existing resources to be able to promote to nearby communities. Next slide, please. And the timing couldn't be more critical. With vaccines rolling out, intent to travel is certainly increased to levels we haven't seen since the pandemic began. And the difference between this year and now is that air travel is once again viable. This is the perfect time to reach new customers outside of California. In fact, we spend a lot of money on research, and those that arrive from outside California stay 30% longer on average and are most likely to travel midweek and during off-peak seasons. And additionally, their travel supports all of this new air service that we have been fortunate to be able to secure, and we have more coming online in the next month. And so it's critical for outbound travel for our residents as well, so that they can enjoy the benefits. And ultimately, growing travel from out of state is directly going to impact the city's bottom line, as I mentioned previously. Next slide. So here's where we're at. Travel has indeed started to recover based heavily on in-state travelers, and we're seeing some of the recovery here on weekends, as mentioned previously. But out-of-state travel has only recovered at 29%. So this really illuminates the opportunity to gain hotel occupancy and resulting transient occupancy tax revenues in the coming months. And our Visit Santa Barbara current TBID revenue and the annual city funding that we do receive will keep us competitive with the in-state market. We can't afford to lose any market share, but recovering out of state is really what we urgently need the city's additional investment. Next slide. And I know how important return on investment is. It means everything to us as well, too. So your additional $200,000 investment will enable us to reach these high value travelers. Every penny will go toward proven sales marketing tactics, targeting markets we haven't been able to reach since March 2020. The city is going to recoup your investment and then some, and the whole community stands to benefit. In fact, the city would break even with a 1% increase in hotel revenue, and then anything over 1% equates to new general fund revenues. And this doesn't even take into account the additional sales tax revenues that would be generated. So additional boosts obviously include local employment, as I'd mentioned, one of our key goals too. And restaurants, retailers, attractions, museums will all benefit. And I think it's during times of crisis when we really understand how important tourism is to our local economy and to our city revenues as well, too. So we see great possibilities, and your investment in this recovery will mean so much to the industry and to our community. Thank you so much for your consideration and for your ongoing trust.
Thank you, Ms. Janega Dykes, for your presentation. And since you're on right now, I will open up for questions. Do any of my colleagues have questions for Ms. Janega Dykes at this point? Hearing none, I don't have any questions myself. Thank you for your presentation. And we'll go on to the next presenter.
Good afternoon. Committee Chair Friedman, Councilmember Harmon, and Councilmember Gutierrez, thank you for the opportunity to present our proposals to you that would increase our capacity to respond to the crisis of homelessness in our neighborhoods throughout the city of Santa Barbara. I'm Barbara Anderson with the Santa Barbara Alliance for Community Transformation, known as SBACT. I'm the facilitator of the Act on Homelessness Collaborative, and I work with my colleagues, Jeff Schaefer, Rich Sander, and Landon Rank, to serve as the backbone of our collective impact-driven collaboration of close to 100 individuals and organizations that are all working to reduce homelessness and its impacts in the city of Santa Barbara. First, I want to extend my gratitude to you, the mayor, and other members of the city council, along with city staff. I think you and we often hear that the city isn't doing enough to address the complexities of homelessness. But we can say firsthand that since the launch of our 3-year strategic plan in December 2020, we've had more support than we could have ever imagined. And this support has continued to increase even over the last 6 months. You've approved more resources for outreach and case management, more support for coordination and collaboration for cross-sector organizations, and most recently, a significant financial investment in bridge housing that provides transitional housing for those that are under case management as CityNet works to find them a permanent place to live. We also have data-driven systems in place that are enabling our residents to report their concerns and for city staff and collaborative partners to be able to be more responsive and report back on actions that could be lawfully and respectfully taken. In the past quarter, the Act on Homelessness regional action plans on the East Side, State Street, and the waterfront have worked with CityNet to help 21 individuals exit homelessness. This puts us on the path to reach our goal of 100 street exits by the end of 2021. And though we've made substantial progress over the last year, we know that there is much more that needs to be done. It is with this understanding that SBAC is bringing forth 2 proposals for funding from the city of Santa Barbara. Our first proposal is for additional financial resources of $50,000 to facilitate our citywide collaborative. This is due to the growing and evolving nature of our work to represent the city's interests and priorities in addressing homelessness, as well as to engage nonprofit service providers, faith-based organizations, business owners, and residents in creating and implementing mutually beneficial solutions. We have expanded to an additional working group that will be focused on housing retention. This will address challenges in providing sufficient supportive services to our most vulnerable individuals as they transition to a permanent housing unit. We've also added an additional regional action plan that is engaging business owners and residents on the waterfront that are confronting more challenges and public safety concerns relating to our unsheltered population that resides in that region. Our collaborative approach is not only unique in the way that our diverse 18-member leadership team provides oversight, contributes their expertise and knowledge to the strategies we are implementing, and accountability for our progress, but it's also unique in the way that we are simultaneously working with business owners and residents that are experiencing frustration, anxiety, and fear of how the growing number of individuals experiencing homelessness impact the ability for our local economy to thrive and our neighborhoods to be safe for families. This comes with it more one-on-one meetings to address concerns, more educational, informational conversations about our 3-year plan and how we're measuring progress, as well as media outreach, countywide meetings and events, as well as presentations and panel discussions. This consumes the capacity of our team, of which we're asking for this additional investment of $50,000 to the $100,000 commitment from the city of Santa Barbara from the previous fiscal year. This $50,000 would be matched with private donors and local foundation grants, of which we already received commitments of $15,000 to date. Our second proposal is to address the imminent needs we're seeing from individuals living on the streets, as well as the impact that is having on our neighborhoods. The Neighborhood Navigation Center model evolved from the needs we were seeing during the early response phase to the COVID-19 pandemic. We knew that more had to be done to provide holistic and compassionate care to individuals living on the streets, as well as to work more strategically and comprehensively to address their needs and build enough trust for them to be open to case management. The model has been formalized at Alameda Park by facilitating memorandums of understanding with key service providers that enable us to collect and share data, connect to outreach and case management through CityNet, facilitate shelter referrals to the rescue mission, and provide much needed healthcare, mental health support, hygiene care, food, and pet care. SB Act and the Act on Homelessness Collaborative has been meeting with providers and city staff weekly in support of the neighborhood navigation centers and feels strongly that the Carrillo Castillo commuter lot could be another ideal location for one of these centers. Currently, Showers of Blessing is operating at that site, and there are individuals from multiple neighborhoods that can access that location. We are asking for support from the city to facilitate this expansion, as well as a possible third site over the next fiscal year for a total of $100,000. SB Act is committed in all of our proposals to the city of Santa Barbara to match your public dollars with private resources. So we are currently in the process of securing a match also for the neighborhood navigation centers. We are confident that we can secure an investment of up to $100,000 by private donors and grants from local foundations to match the financial support from the city for this project. Thank you again for giving us the opportunity to present these proposals to you. We fully understand that you have a lot of important decisions ahead and how you allocate your resources. So we are asking today for your continued support and prioritization on addressing homelessness. We are very concerned about the growing number of individuals that are currently experiencing homelessness, as well as those that are experiencing financial hardship and housing insecurity because of the COVID-19 pandemic. We need, as a city and collaborative, to be prepared for what's ahead. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Sanderson, and for all the work that SB Act is doing for our community and for helping us try to address the homelessness and be proactive. So I will open it up for questions from my colleagues for Ms. Anderson. Ms. Gutierrez or Ms. Harmon, do you have any questions for Ms. Anderson? Councilmember Gutierrez.
Good morning, Ms. Anderson. Thank
Good
you
morning.
for all the work you've done in the community. My question is, how much of the time of SB Act staff do they spend in meetings versus, outside in the community working with the homeless population?
So we actually are not a direct service provider. So that's another kind of unique part of SB Act. Everything we do is to engage other community stakeholders. So yes, we work with direct service providers like what we're facilitating in Alameda Park. And we are in the park every Thursday evening providing coordination, on-site logistics, as well as making sure that if there's an incident that we're implementing proper de-escalation strategies. And we will continue to do that if funded at the Carrillo Castillo commuter lot. But most of our day-to-day is facilitating coordination and collaboration among hundreds of individuals and organizations. We all need to be essentially rowing in the same direction for us to be able to facilitate visible and measurable impacts and reductions to individuals experiencing homelessness. So our community engagement is individual meetings, one-on-one conversations, concerned residents, concerned business owners, and then working with service providers on removing barriers on how they implement their programming and their work. Just this week, we had a housing and shelter working group meeting, and we heard a lot of needs and challenges of service providers with their current capacity, and then their concerns of what could be ahead as more individuals are at risk of experiencing homelessness because of COVID-19.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gutierrez. I do have a couple of questions. First, I just want to clarify the request is for $100,000 for larger proposal from the city. It's $200,000 for the total program, and then you're matching that, or is it $200,000 from the city that you're requesting?
For the neighborhood navigation centers, it's $100,000 from the city that we will then match with an additional $100,000 for a total fiscal year commitment of $200,000. The coordination and collaboration proposal, $100,000 has been the previous commitment from the city and is allocated through the budget. We're asking for an additional $50,000 to support our extended and expanded capacity.
I just wanted to clarify because I think the presentation, it was unclear whether it was 200 or 1,000 from the city that we're asking for. I do have a couple of questions just in regard to this expansion for both of these requests. One, would it enable more services to be provided to the high risk areas or the high volume areas, such as the library, where we've had a lot of issues and expect once it reopens that we're going to have some issues there, but also opportunities to really address this and work with the homeless community, but also areas such as the on and off ramps on Garden Street, Carrillo Street, and then also in the West Beach neighborhood. So would this enable us to provide more resources in those neighborhoods? going forward?
Yeah, Committee Chairman Friedman, we are looking to expand the neighborhood navigations exactly for that reason. And so the more capacity that we can provide in meeting individuals where they're at, the less impacts we can have in those regions, as well as reducing impacts in other high traffic regions. So although the under and overpass kind of territory is under Caltrans, I know the city staff is working really closely with them to understand, again, once we're in a post-COVID environment, what can be done to address and mitigate some of the impacts that I know residents, as well as tourists and other individuals that come into our city experience around those regions. I think we are looking at the possibility of a third location for a neighborhood navigation center, which is in our proposal, could absolutely happen in the next few months. Again, because we are seeing a growing number of individuals experiencing homelessness, and these impacts are very visible in every region. So a third region being identified, again, that would be strategic to both reducing impacts, addressing concerns, and then strategic to individuals in that area that frequent the region, that reside in that region that are experiencing homelessness as well. So increased capacity, absolutely in that regard.
Thank you. Those are the questions. I have some comments regarding it, but I'll reserve those till we do our deliberations. But thank you. I'm not seeing any more questions from my colleagues. So thank you, Ms. Anderson. And now we will move on to, it looks like, Commercial Fishermen of Santa Barbara. Mr. Nelson, I believe you have the floor.
Chairman Friedman, council members Harmon and Gutierrez, thank you for the opportunity. I'm standing in today for Kim Selko, the executive director of CFSB, who could not be here. But I'm happy to recall for you an approval that you made back, the council made back in August of 2020 for an economic development initiative that had two principal objectives. The first was to create a contribution to economic recovery by focusing on the local seafood industry as a way to diversify the city's economy. The second aspect of the initiative was to focus on the infrastructure needs of our working waterfront, and particularly those of the commercial fishing fleet. We devised and developed a capital project known as the Maritime Collective that would satisfy, as a first phase, the needs of our commercial fleet for gear, boat, and cold storage. But secondarily, in a second phase, would provide an opportunity or a platform, if you will, for entrepreneurs engaging in the blue economy. We always anticipated as a funding plan for this project that we would rely heavily on private and public funds, but the public funds would principally come from grants that we competed for at the federal and state level. This request today is a reflection of a partnership with the city to do just that. We have had recent discussions with the USDA as well as the Economic Development Administration that have informed us that there are funds from the American Rescue Plan that will be coming to their agencies that could be made available for our project, but we will be required to make a 25% match. This request does that. It sets the money aside, so if we're successful, there would be $25,000 to satisfy the local match. As evidence of this partnership, and that would be fortified with this grant, I was encouraged to make this request by Jason Harris, who we're working very closely with on his economic development plan, which is pending. And secondarily, when you approved this initiative back in August of 2020, you established council oversight, which was to be provided by two council members, one of which is the chair of the Finance Committee, Mr. Friedman, as well as Mike Jordan, who have also reviewed this request. So we appreciate any consideration you might give for us, but also consider one more thing. though the economic benefits associated with this initiative are our primary goals and objectives, we have learned of a secondary benefit from this program and initiative, and that's food security. One of the things that we're learning is that food security is becoming a real problem in our region and in our city. And this initiative helps address that as well. To emphasize that point, over the last year, we basically have provided 7,000 pounds of locally caught seafood to food banks and soup kitchens to provide about 30,000 meals. The demand is incredible, and we we're able to do this by virtue of donations from local charities and national charities. So we are not only with this initiative, this small set aside, are we addressing economics, an economic development initiative, but we're also, in a small way, also addressing food security. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and I appreciate your chair's active engagement in this. We knew there would be oversight by the city council members on this initiative, but in the case of council members Friedman and Jordan, it's on the ground direct assistance. They've been meeting with property owners in an effort to try to secure space for the Maritime Collective, and for that we are extremely grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Appreciate your presentation, and been great to work with you and the commercial fishermen on this industry and the needs of meeting this industry. So I will open it up for questions from my colleagues, council members Gutierrez or Harmon. Do you have any questions for Mr. Nelson? Seeing no lights turned on, Mr. Nelson, I don't have any questions for you. I appreciate your presentation. And thank you. So now we'll move on to our next presentation, which is the Economic Development Partnership. So that's Ms. Cooper and Mr. Higbee. Ms. Cooper, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Councilmember Friedman, Councilmember Harmon, and Councilmember Gutierrez. Keith is at his house, so I'm going to take the lead on this. I really appreciate having the time to speak with you today. I'm here to discuss the needs for the continued support of economic development for our downtown. You've all seen the results from the initial phase of the prototype that was funded with seed money from the city, Visit Santa Barbara, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Better Together Fund. And this request is for continued meaningful support for that effort by the city. Over the past several years, the city of Santa Barbara has spent substantial money and effort soliciting studies and reports on how to revitalize our downtown business district. And this initiative effectively utilizes those investments to implement true economic development programs tailored to the needs of our residents, visitors, and workforce. I want to be clear, as I said in my submission, that this is not a matter of just filling vacancies, but of strategically addressing the specific needs of our downtown ecosystem, including those of existing and prospective business owners. And I also feel that this is a crucial time for us to act because we have a 20% storefront vacancy rate and a record high level of office space vacancy. And that obviously adds to a decline in downtown vitality. And we also have a major decline in bed tax revenues and an imbalanced and unsustainable business mix. So proactive economic development is really community development because it provides a huge return on any investment that you make. Every dollar spent helps to create an expanded variety of job opportunities beyond just food and beverage, diversify downtown businesses and local business ownership, build local revenue and tax base, foster a healthy and dynamic tourism economy, and ultimately support and fund public policy initiatives like those we've heard from Santa Barbara Act. We've also been working closely with Jason Harris and his economic development plan, and he encouraged us to present this to you as a synergistic addition to what he has planned. One final note, based on the conversations with the three of you, and specifically an analysis of similar economic development initiatives nationwide, it's clear that this partnership needs to be a neutral, non-political effort. And for that reason, we're in discussion to become a 501c3 or be partnered as a fiscal sponsor under an existing 501c3, such as the Santa Barbara Better Together Group, which is currently housed under the Santa Barbara Foundation. So at this critical juncture, a meaningful funding commitment from the city and other partner organizations will be required for us to continue. So that's my speech, but I just want to say personally that meeting one-on-one with each of you, I really feel like you understand the need for this economic development and the fact that the city has an opportunity to care as much about what's in the buildings as what the buildings look like or what the streetscape is like. And time is of the essence so that we can repopulate in a way that's intentional and thoughtful so that our downtown can thrive for generations to come. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. Appreciate the presentation and your efforts over the past year. So I'll open up to questions from my colleagues, Councilmember Gutierrez or Harmon. Seeing none, I don't have any questions myself at this time. I'll reserve for comments later. So thank you, Ms. Cooper. So at this point,
Thank you very much.
I will open it up to public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this item? Mr. DeMartini, do you see any members of the public who are raising their hand to speak to any of the items or to this item in particular?
Yes, Chair Friedman, I am monitoring public comment and I am not seeing any hands raised at this time.
Okay, thank you. I will close public comment for outside agency requests and now open it up to my colleagues for comments in any direction that you'd like to see for the full council. Councilmember Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Friedman. Before this goes to council, I would like to actually see a detailed budget of how the amount of money that they're requesting from the city, how they will be using it within their larger organization. Is that okay to ask?
Oh, yes, and you're talking about each request or in particular, are you asking about any specific?
Yeah, each request.
For all of them?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. DeMartini.
If I may, Chair Freeman and Committee Member Gutierrez, thank you for that question. And for the question that was actually discussed yesterday during the budget work session, I know that was a request that was already provided to staff to provide detailed budgets for outside agencies that already receive funding from the city of Santa Barbara. So that will be coming. That's scheduled to come to the city council on June 9th as part of the full packet of action items and requests and staff recommended changes to the recommended budget at that time. That will be scheduled for June 9th. Next Tuesday, there will be another Finance Committee meeting at 12 o'clock where the Finance Committee will receive and sort of review all of the sort of action items that were requested and follow-ups from Finance Committee meetings at that time. I'm not sure if we'll be able to get the detailed budgets for next week, but staff can do their very best to be able to get that from the agencies. And if not, it might have to be discussed at the 9th. So I just wanted to make sure that we were on the same page in regards to timing.
Thank you. On that, I would also like to add, if we can also show on that detailed budget, the commitments of funding from other organizations to the specific organizations that are requesting summary. If I can have that breakdown as well.
Yes, I think yes.
Yes, we will be sure to request that information from the agencies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gutierrez. Councilmember Harmon, do you have any questions at this point? Got your camera working, so you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Friedman. Is this just questions right now?
This is comments as well. We've already done public comments, so it's deliberative comments and any further questions you have.
Okay, well, I guess I do have a quick question. Are we voting specifically on these items today, or are we just sort of giving our initial thoughts and then it'll go to the full council for a vote?
So I'll take a crack at this and then Mr. DeMartini, feel free to fill in. So I think we're giving a general direction today. So what we're trying to do is, are there ones that we want to forward, maybe with conditions for further discussion to council? Are there others that we want to recommend? Unfortunately, we're not able to fund them. So it's pretty much what the committee wants. We don't necessarily have to take a vote today. Is that right, Mr. Martini? It's just giving direction for us. And then next week, we'll come back next week as part of it. And then we would form the full recommendation, forward those onto council. And then council has we'd have a full discussion because some of the information such as that Councilmember Gutierrez requested today, we can have that full discussion at council. So it's really looking at each one of these programs and direction where you think they should go so that staff can get that input.
Yes, Chair Friedman, Committee Member Gutierrez, Harmon, that is absolutely correct. That's the process.
Okay, thank you both very much. That's very helpful. I'll just give, I guess, my initial thoughts. And I have to start my comments where I did last year on this issue is I remain incredibly uncomfortable with the outside request process. I just, you know, I recognize the need for it, and I appreciate that there's an opportunity sort of for a catch-all where folks can come when they don't necessarily fit in somewhere else. But it does worry me that I'm not sure our whole community knows this opportunity exists. And I just, you know, I've been uncomfortable from the beginning with this idea that if you're sort of in the know about this opportunity, you're in the know and you can bring something forward. So I just need to put that out there. You know, I still, moving forward, looking into the future, I would really like us to consider how we approach these outside requests to make sure either that we advertise that it's available and do so in Spanish, do so to all the organizations that might be interested in additional city funding. I just, every year, I have some real discomfort with it. I don't know what the reporting requirements are. I don't know. So it just, there's something that doesn't sit quite right with me. And it certainly has nothing to do with the folks that have come and made requests today, rather with our outside request process. And I wanted to put that plug out there again, that I would like to see us maybe as a finance committee have a conversation about ways that we can clean this up, ways that we can streamline it, ways that we can make it more equitable and just more available to folks. I think I've come around to the idea that it's good to have this opportunity. I just want to make sure that everyone has it, not just those who are already engaged with the city system. So that's my soapbox, and I will step down on that. On to the specific requests. Just a couple of initial thoughts for me, and I would appreciate seeing the information requested by Councilmember Gutierrez as well. I think that's going to really help me to sort of figure out my thoughts. You know, this is a difficult year for us budget-wise, and so, you know, we already make a large commitment to Visit Santa Barbara. They do an amazing job, and I really am so grateful for that work. Excuse me. But for me, I think I'm not so inclined to make such a big allocation for out-of-state marketing right now when we have really specific needs related to, for example, homelessness, which we have articulated as a council. That's a significant priority for us and a priority for our visitors as well. So, you know, that's just sort of my instinct on that one, that I think in this moment with the financial situation that we're in, I'm just not sure that I'm going to be able to get comfortable with it. On the request from Ms. Cooper, sorry, my computer keeps doing that. On the request from Ms. Cooper, I really appreciate the good work that they've done. I'm very interested in continuing the relationship. Again, the amount of money, I'm just not sure I'm going to be able to get there. Additionally, because so many of the other organizations that they are requesting funds from are organizations that the city itself gives money to. So when I look at that list, you know, $150,000 for MUS and then $50,000 from downtown Santa Barbara, we fund that organization. Money, I think, from Visit Santa Barbara, the city funds that. So I think if you really look at where the money's coming from, a lot more of it's coming from the city than just that 150. So I have a little bit of discomfort there. I would have liked to see sort of a broader range of organizations. And I'm just not sure that we have the capacity with all that we're trying to do this year to fund at that level. But I am interested in continuing to stay engaged. And of course, I've already expressed my support for the request from the commercial fishermen, particularly in light of the matching funds that they have been able to pull together, the opportunity rather. I think that's what I love to see. I love to see when someone comes forward saying, hey, we have this opportunity to get a lot more money, help us leverage that opportunity. And we have also expressed, and I think Mr. Nelson said this really well, as a council, that is a priority for us to diversify our economy and to make sure that we're not just siloed here in terms of our economic industry. And so I really like that. So I guess those are just sort of my initial thoughts. And I think I would support the allocation to SB Act. Again, for reasons that I've sort of already articulated. This is a priority for us. And the implications for ameliorating our homeless crisis in this city are significant. It goes to economic development. It goes to attracting tourism. It goes to quality of life. So all of these issues, I think, have a nexus with how much we fund our homeless efforts. So that's my 2 cents on all of these. I mean, again, just initial thoughts. I know we'll come back with more information, and I so value the work that all of these organizations do, and I just can't say that enough. And I truly, this is like my least favorite thing that Finance Committee ever does, because it's truly not at all a reflection of the good work that any of you do, that I have discomfort with the process, and certainly not a reflection on your absolutely essential work that we're in a budget year that's asking us to tighten our belt. And so I think we do need to be a little bit circumspect. All right, that's it for me. Thank you, Chair Friedman.
Thank you, Councilmember Hart. Very salient points. Councilmember Gutierrez, if you'd like to add, and then I'll go. So you have the floor.
I would like to support Ms. Harmon's request. I totally agree with everything she said. I would really like for the city to consider a RFP or an RFQ seeking proposal, and also see if the city provides any funding that is contingent to other agency support. I would like to push this forward, but I definitely have more questions. So like Ms. Harmon said, I don't doubt the good work that these organizations do, but I think as a city, and I've said it many times, we have to do a better job in the way we send out communication information from City Hall to have a more inclusive, diverse group of people coming to request funding. But I would like further discussion.
Thank you, Councilmember Gutierrez. So I appreciate your comments as well. So I'll just first start off by thanking our staff and thanking the applicants for coming forward on this. And you all serve a great community. But as you can see, prior years, we struggle with this process, and it's not the best process. I'll say that. And I recognize this process. It happened at the County Board of Supervisors when I worked there years ago, and it was always one that could be improved. So Mr. DeMartini, if you're listening, I think we should have an item at a future, after budget's done, that we should have an item on how to address this in the future. And items to consider is, do we have a process through Finance Committee? Do we have maybe Human Services expand, having something where we could have one of our boards and commissions really vet those types of things, even looking at not even funding them through this process, but through another type of process. I think it does make it, changing the process is more transparent. And it is something, as both my colleagues stressed, that we struggle with each and every year. And this year in particular, with such budget challenges, it's very challenging. But also in years where we have better economic times, it can also lead to more requests, yet we have to be prudent because we're looking ahead. So there's just a lot of different pressures. And again, we want to be transparent on it. So I think we can have that discussion. This process has been in place at the council, so I appreciate my colleagues raising that issue. And so at a future agenda item, let's definitely discuss that on finance. As to today's requests, I'll say that I do have some more questions on these, but I think the purpose of today's meeting is to see if there is more that we could at least forward on for further discussion. I'll begin with Visit Santa Barbara. I do want to say thank you to all the great work that Visit Santa Barbara does for our community, especially over the last 3 years that I've been on council. First, the Thomas Fire and the debris flow and coming back and all that you did to help get us back up and running, and now with the pandemic. But like my colleague said, I'm in a place now where we're looking at significant challenges to some of the programs that we're funding for our residents, and we are continuing to fund through other means. So I just don't see the capacity right now to be able to fund that request. But I do appreciate all the work that you're doing. And so moving on to SB Act, I do think that homelessness it's the #1 challenge that we're facing as a community right now. And we do need to have as many resources as we can available to our neighborhoods, and to look at what can be done and to assist those who want to get off the streets and get them into the services they need. But also looking at just how we can show that our community really wants to help, but we also want to make sure that we're serving the neighborhoods as well, so that we're really addressing the issue comprehensively. So what I'd like to do is look at these requests. I think there's more questions that could be asked. I really want to understand, how we're going into the neighborhoods. Alameda Park is an issue that's coming up. Then the location to the playground, those types of things. So I'd like to, my preference would be to move forward with the recommendation on it, but to have the full council consider it and perhaps hold that funding aside and have a full discussion on the types of resources and where we as a full council would like to allocate those, and have a more robust discussion that has more public input on it as well. So move those forward, but have a further discussion on where those resources will specifically be allocated. Because there's some things in here that I support, and there's some things I have a lot of questions about, and there's other areas that we might want to specifically, as we go forward with the scope of work, to actually, as council directive, target those specific resources. In terms of the commercial fishermen, of course, I'm supporting that. I've been appointed with Councilmember Jordan to work on this, and because we have that match, potential match, if we were to get that grant, or they were able to get that grant, requires the local funding. That would allow for a planning process to take place, and that would move that forward. And again, we're really talking about an industry that pays good wages. It's one that has a diverse workforce, and it's something that's local that only we can do because of where we live. And so it's really has so many benefits, and it's just part of our culture here in Santa Barbara, in the working harbor. So to try to get that state grant and get that planning process moving forward, to really look at the fishing industry and what we can do to support it in its longevity, I think is worth the investment. And then the last item from Ms. Cooper and Mr. Higbee is I think it is this year in particular important that we do look at business retention and recruitment and opportunities to support Mr. Harris. He is a one-man shop right now, but I don't see how that large of a request. So I'd like some more information from them on reducing the costs. I would think perhaps if we have to make a recommendation up to City Council, no more than $50,000 towards it. But again, the questions that my colleagues asked are, who are the additional partners? So I want to get more information on that, and I don't see being able to fund the whole $150,000 request. But again, it comes out, who are the partners, what are the metrics, and then what would we be reviewing in a year, because this would be an ongoing program. So I'd like to understand those, and for the council to fully understand when we have the discussions at the full council on that. So those are my thoughts. And Mr. DeMartini, do you need any further direction from finance today, or any further clarification from my colleagues on what or do you have what you need to bring back?
Yes, Chair Freeman, thank you very much. I believe staff has been taking notes, and we have direction from the committee members as to the requests that are before you. Staff will prepare responses and get additional information from the requesting agencies, and we will be able to share that with you next Tuesday at your Finance Committee meeting, so that you have that in order for you to continue your evaluation and make your recommendation to the full City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martini. And for my colleagues in the public that are watching, next week we would make a recommendation to council for further discussion, and that could always change at council based on the information we get from this coming week, and then information in those intervening weeks as well. So I will close that item and now move it on to the staff enterprise fund fees. And I will turn it over again to Mr. DiMartini to kick us off.
Thank you very much, Chair Friedman. So now the second agenda item for today is to hear proposed fee changes for the enterprise funds. And we'll start it off with the golf division in Parks and Recreation. So I'll turn it over to staff who will present their proposed fee changes to you. And then you can go ahead and ask questions and have a discussion after the presentations. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Jasmine LeBlanc with the Parks and Recreation Department. I have a quick presentation on fees for the golf fund for this coming year. So next slide, please. Fee considerations. When we think about fees at the golf course, we are thinking about how to maximize participation, target the appropriate markets for golf, stay competitive in the industry regionally, make sure that we're providing community benefits so the prices are accessible to as many community members as possible, and keep costs or keep our prices up sufficiently to cover labor and water cost increases and to have sufficient funding for capital projects. Next slide, please. We have a variety of fee changes proposed for fiscal year 22 that would take effect in September. Most of them are very small fee changes of just $1 increase on a variety of items, such as buckets of balls at the driving range, a $1 increase on 18 holes for the green fees, and for cart fees. We have a couple of larger fee increases proposed, a variety from $10 to $25 for several of our youth programming opportunities. So we offer camps and after school programs, and we're trying to bring these closer to full cost recovery. They will still be very competitive prices for similar after school programs and summer camps. And we also have an increase to our preferred club card of $10. This is an annual card that gets frequent golfers priority access to making booking reservations and discounted green fee rates. Next slide, please. So when we compare our fees, we still offer very competitive fees for this region. If you look at two of the other courses that are close by and open to the public, we are significantly lower, almost $20 lower than Glen Annie, and I think about $40 lower than at the Sandpiper. So I will point out that, as I mentioned, we have a club card program. Glen Annie also has a club card program, and when someone were to choose to participate in their club card, then the pricing for Santa Barbara Golf Course and Glen Annie are very similar. And next slide, please. That concludes the presentation for golf fund fee changes. And I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Blanc, for the presentation. Any questions from my colleagues on the committee? We did hear this earlier in the week, or last week, so thank you, or yesterday, I think it was. My, how time flies. Seeing no questions, thank you, Ms. LeBlanc, and we'll move on to the next presentation.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, Chair Friedman, members of the committee. Malcolm Hamilton, Water Resources Financial Officer, here today to go over the proposed fee changes for the water and wastewater funds for fiscal year 2022. Just as a quick note, we are just going to be focusing on fees today. We will be having a full discussion on water rates as well as solid waste rates on June 15th at the public hearing. Next slide, please. So this just gives a general overview of the proposed fee changes for water. We have no new fees proposed for fiscal year 2022. We did complete this year, and what we do every year is do a service cost analysis on fees that have been in place for at least 5 or more years. And so what this does is allows us to reset the baseline for fees and bring them back into line with current cost levels. The outcome of this for water was that many of our fees stayed around just slight decreases or slight increases overall. Now, for fees that were not part of this annual service cost analysis, we did a 3% general increase, with the intention there to be to track inflationary cost increases primarily in our labor and materials costs. For wastewater, we are proposing 3 new fees. However, these are for existing services. So these are services already offered to individuals, but we are not currently recuperating the cost for those services. And I'm going to walk through each of those after this slide. We also in wastewater, within the last year, made some changes to Title 14, which governs a lot of our water and wastewater municipal code requirements, as well as Title 16, which deals with our pre-treatment program. And so we made language updates to those parts of the municipal code, and now we brought the fee resolution in line with those updates so that it's all consistent. And then additionally for wastewater, some of the fees are actually based on competitive bid processes with contractors. However, for the remainder of our fees, we are doing a 3% increase. And just like water, the intention there is to track inflationary pressures. Next slide, please. So the first new fee that we're proposing in wastewater is a sewer lateral connection abandonment fee. This primarily occurs when there's redevelopment at a property and they're changing the location at which they're connecting to the sewer main. And so currently we have a contractor on hand to do the lateral connection removal and then patch up the pipe where the connection used to be. What we're proposing and what we're currently paying to these contractors is $901 per abandonment. And then an important part in general about these fees is that they're serving an individual customer, so they're providing a benefit to an individual customer as opposed to the entire customer base, which those types of services are largely covered by rates. Next slide, please. The second fee in wastewater that we're proposing is a lateral liner inspection fee. So it may be a possibility for certain homeowners or property owners to repair their sewer lateral with this lining technology. However, in order to do that, it does require some staff time to coordinate and inspect and do pre and post video review once the lining is complete. And so for that service, which we are already performing for customers, we're proposing a $174 fee that would cover all of the coordination, inspection, and video review. Next slide, please. And then finally, a third new fee that we're adding, again, for an existing service is a sewer lateral review fee. So there are certain building permit conditions that may trigger a sewer lateral review. And we are proposing an $87 fee for the staff time involved and the review of the videos that come from those building permit conditions. And that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton, for the presentation. Are there any questions from my colleagues on water and wastewater fees? Seeing no lights turn on, thank you, Mr. Hamilton, for the presentation. And now we will turn it over to the Waterfront Department.
Good afternoon, Finance Chair Friedman and other committee members, Harmon and Gutierrez. I'm here today, Brian Bossy with the Waterfront. I'm the Waterfront Business Manager to tell you a little bit about our proposed fee adjustments for fiscal year 22. First off, we are an enterprise fund, as all the other folks presenting today are, and we receive no general fund funding, no funding from the general fund. As a result, our department is always very cautious and conservative when we're looking at fee changes. In order to help us with proposed fee changes, we do an annual survey of 17 marinas, both public and private, all the way from Santa Cruz Harbor down to Oceanside Harbor. And we share that information with everybody who participates, but it kind of helps us gauge where we're at. The idea is not to be competitive. We are a very special place and we are unique, far above all the other marinas, if I do say so myself, but it does help us see where we're at as far as the industry is concerned. So with that, our proposed fees for this year. Next slide, please. First off, we have a slip rental fee, 3% increase on that. We have 1,143 slips in the harbor, and we're proposing to raise that monthly fee by 3%. And after I get through with these few bullet points, I'll show you what that exactly means on a slip by slip basis. So again, 3% slip rental fee adjustment. Next is our liveaboard fee. We are also proposing, in line with the slip rental fee, a 3% increase on our liveaboard fees. We allow a maximum of 110 liveaboard permits in the harbor. And for the first time in more than a decade, we are fully subscribed and actually have a waiting list for liveaboards. So the current rate is $120. That 3% would add $3.60 to that monthly bill for a new total of $123.60. Next on the list is our visitor fee. These are for visiting vessels up and down the coast, passing through, staying for a couple of days, couple of weeks. We have two categories. We are proposing for both of those to raise that fee by 50 cents per foot. The two categories are vessels below 70 feet and vessels above 70 feet. So for vessels below 70 feet, we would move that fee from $1 per foot to $1.50. For those vessels above 70 feet, it would now go from $1.50 to $2. This helps us with our cost recovery for the amount of electricity and water that these visiting vessels use. We are a very busy harbor. We are full every weekend of the calendar year and most days during the week throughout the year as well. So we continue to be a very popular place, which is a good sign for the harbor. Next slide, please. So this is a kind of a slip-by-slip basis of what a 3% slip fee adjustment would do. So for example, the 25 foot, it would add 29 cents per foot to your monthly tab, resulting in $7.24 additional on your monthly bill. So to put that in perspective, that would bring the new total for these folks to just under $250 per month. The average with the other marinas that we survey is just shy of $300 a month. For a 40-footer, same thing, it would add 33 cents a foot or $13.20 to their monthly bill for a new total of $453 for our harbor compared with other harbors, which cost over $645 is the average. And then lastly, a 60-footer adds 39 cents per foot. Again, $23.22 for the total monthly bill. So their new total for a month would be just under $800, $797. The average amongst all the other marinas is $1,157. So we're obviously still very competitive. We're inching our way up, but again, very competitive fee structure. Next slide, please. Next on the list is we are proposing a slip permittee parking permit increase. This is not the general permit. I just want to reiterate, not the general permit. This is for slip permittees only. So we have 1,143 slips in our harbor. Each of those slips is allowed one slip permittee parking permit. And so we are proposing to raise that by $30. So that would take it from $95 to $125. That would be the same price as the general permit. We feel that this is important. It changes the daily rate essentially from 26 cents a day to 34 cents a day. We are stewards of the public land in our agreement with the State Lands Commission, or State Tidelands Trust, to ensure equal access to all members of the public. These are all public parking lots. And by having this price disparity between our general permits and our slip permittee permits, we're providing a preferential treatment to one group and not the other, and we'd like to get rid of that. So we are proposing a $30 increase. That way all permits would be the same at $125 a year. Still an amazing deal, equal to 34 cents a day to park down in waterfront parking lots. Also part of this would be to eliminate the prorated purchase of permits. So throughout the year, we reduce the price. For example, on May 1st, it went from $125 down to $110. We would like to eliminate that program and just have a single annual price, regardless of the time of purchase. Again, $125 for an annual permit. You're not going to find that anywhere else up and down the coast, period, for this type of parking. And lastly, we are proposing to terminate the harbor parking validation program. This is only for the Harbor Main parking lot. And it's used for two tenants in the boat launch area, Santa Barbara Sailing and Sea Landing. And we'd like to remove the program as it is outdated and it's readily abused. The city and the waterfront are not legally obligated to provide this cost reduction to these two tenants. Again, it's an antiquated program that we'd like to get rid of. And we've talked with both tenants, and one tenant is completely fine getting rid of the program, thinks it's more of a problem than it's actually worth. And again, this gets back to us being stewards of the public land. These are public parking lots. We want to provide equal access to the public, and by providing certain benefits to some tenants and not our other tenants, we don't feel that's right. We'd like to make it an even playing field for all. So that is our final of our 6 proposed fee adjustments, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the Finance Committee might have, knowing that you heard this all last week, so sorry if I'm a bit redundant.
Thank you, Mr. Bossy. Always good to hear things twice. It takes, 7 times to have something go through your head. So, any questions from my colleagues? Hearing none, I will open it up to public comment for this item. Mr. DiMartini, is anyone in the app raising their hand?
Mr. Chair Friedman, I am monitoring public comment. I am not seeing any hands raised at this time.
Right, thank you. I'll close public comment. I don't have any further questions as well, Mr. Bossy. So at this point, you're free to listen. And I will open up for my colleagues if you have any comments on the fees. And not seeing any lights on, I'll just say that we've heard 2 of these presentations before. We're just receiving this information and we'll get forward onto the full council. And with that, I don't think there's no votes needed. So Mr. DiMartini, before we adjourn today's meeting, is there anything else that we need to discuss or any further direction you need for next week?
Mr. Chair Friedman, thank you. No, the staff has received the direction that we need in order to move forward in the budget process. Again, we will reconvene the Finance Committee next Tuesday at 12 o'clock, where we will review all of the feedback and requests for information and action items over the prior Finance Committee meeting. So we will prepare that and bring that to you next Tuesday so that you can review and then make your final recommendation to the full City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DiMartini. Thank you to my colleagues and staff. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.